So, Dominic, off the podcast, you mentioned that you really want to revisit the ending of Monday's podcast and basically our key takeaway for our audience member. And when I was talking about that, I was saying, I want you to look at your values and not talk to ChatGPT, not talk to your parents, not talk to your friends, not talk to your spouse. Look to yourself, get some inner wisdom, and really know thyself. When we started talking about it off the pod, and we were like, "Hey, let's stop this conversation. We'll have it on the podcast." So, what was it that you wanted to bring up about that, so we can continue that conversation from Monday?
I was talking with a friend recently about the concept of misogi, and this is going to be a couple minute rant for a bit, but there's this Japanese phrase, proverb, action. It's called misogi, right? It's doing a year-defining event, right? And I was telling him about it, and I was like, man, I haven't told any. Like, this is like my guy, right? This is like we're on the same path and the same level, right? But we're on different paths. So it's like talking to a mirror with this one, with Philip. And I was telling him about this thing. I was like, man, like, don't tell anybody. I'm like, this is a year-defining event. I don't want to say it publicly. I mentioned it on the podcast. I didn't even give details about it. I was scared. I finally told it to him. And he was telling me, he's like, that's a great idea. Here's mine. And he was telling me about how, back in the day, he wanted to accomplish this thing. But when he asked his family, when he asked his mom, she kind of coddled him a little bit, right? Nothing wrong with that. The mom was doing exactly what the mom was designed to do. Protect the child, right? So when she gave advice, it came from a skewed perspective. And at the end of last episode, we talked about, finding what is enough, finding your true values. What's your core values? And I wanted to make sure and preface that you don't look outward to find your true values, because you're not going to find them outward. You can only find them looking inward. And in a world where, I can just Google it. That's ChatGPT. It's smarter than ever now, Or I'll go ask mom or dad in the other room, or a brother or sister over text, or a mentor or a teacher, or someone who you respect. Everybody's going to have their own core values. But if you can learn how to think, that's a very powerful thing to learn. We talk about ChatGPT being this great search engine, Google, great search engine, but we don't talk about the greatest search engine ever created. That's our mind. It solved problems that we could never imagine. Heck, we've been to the moon. So I just want to preface you, before you look outward, look inward. And don't look to us as examples. Just look to us as guides for your journey. That's really all we are. But that's what I wanted to start off today's podcast with, because I was worried. I know some people quick to know the answer. What's my core values? What are other people's core values? No, wrong question. It's not what other people. This isn't other people. We're trying to get away from comparison. Comparison is the opposite of gratitude, and we're trying to be gratitude-filled people.
So just to revisit for the listener, in case they haven't listened to Monday, our action step for the week was to first ask yourself this question: what would your life look like if you decided you already had enough? If you already were enough? And then Dominic earlier on the podcast talked about sitting down with a journal or with yourself and not just talking in your own head. Like, if you need to talk to an inanimate object, like your phone, and just turn it on to record, that's something that I do. If you want to just go straight pen and paper, like Dominic does, they both work. But you need to sit down and reflect on your core values. Because too often, people who tune in to the Fi Guys, they want the financial independence stuff. They want the money. They want the actual sexy number stuff. But financial independence isn't about numbers. It's never been about reaching numbers. It's been about finding peace with what is enough. And in order to define what is enough, it needs to be aligned with your values. And if you're unclear as to what your values are, whether that be family, joy, contentment, peace, whatever, you can't go to your mom and dad and say, hey, mom and dad, how do I feel about family? Because they're only going to tell you what they feel about family. And yes, it might be good to get somebody else's opinion, but that's going to skew your opinions to what's most important to you. And no one should be able to tell you what your values are. They're your values. And we're moving the podcast in a direction that is more about the personal side of personal finance. And I'm glad that we're doing it because I think this is the more important conversation. This is, by doing this conversation, we're going to be able to play the numbers part on easy mode. Everyone goes straight to the numbers without defining anything else. And I found this for my own life when I had a goal, be financially independent by the time I was 40. And I had a number that was associated with that. And I hit that number and I realized I went to a new place and I was still there. The issue was me. Wherever I went, there I was. And until I kind of realized that, and that's why my Mitsogi for 2025 is to explore this concept of enough, to maybe redefine what is enough to me. Am I enough? And I think maybe we realize that there isn't a what is enough. The real question is, am I enough? Is the core of who I am enough? And I don't know if there's a right or a wrong answer there. Actually, there's probably a wrong answer, but I don't know if there's a right answer there.
Yeah.
Thoughts, Dominic?
You said that you had a number in mind, and when you reached it, you realized the number was a facade. So, would you say it was a facade?
Well, let me preface that. So I thought I had a number and I got to it. And then I realized that that didn't make me happy. So I moved the number, reached that number, did it one more time. And I realized it's not the number. This isn't a number thing.
You can grow your wallet and leave your mindset behind. If I went to the gym, man, I only trained arms, biceps and triceps, baby. I'm like, man, why isn't my butt growing? Why isn't my butt getting bigger? Like, what? I want to have a nice, beautiful butt. What's the deal, man? It's like, dude, you're not training it. You're not training it. And so often we look at enough of just a number, right? Most financial experts, enough is a number. Well, what are your expenses? How much do you need to live? Okay, that's a starting point. It's a great starting point. But enough is it's so much more than just a number. So much more, because once you reach it, scarcity sets in, right? There's so many emotions that set in. There's so many emotions, and you can imagine that. But you wouldn't want to go to the gym just training arms, or just training glutes, or just training calves. It's important to train the whole body. It's important to get some cardio in there. It's important to get some kettlebell swings in there. Maybe some swimming, maybe some sauna work. Why? Because it provides a healthy body, a whole, all-around body. And that's the same thing for your mindset, right? For your personality, for your adventure, for your life. You can't just train your wallet. You got to look inward, like we're talking about, and really discover who you are. I know a lot of people that, I finished high school, got great grades, went to college, got great grades, got a high-paying job, moved up. This is what I do now. It's like, that's cool. Good for you. Make sure you're checking in with yourself, not just going through the motions. And I know how easy it is to go through the motions. Look how far into the year we already are. I got asked a question a few days ago. What'd you do the last 3 days specifically? It's like, oh, wow. I did this, I did that. It's like, but specifically. So time flies, and make sure you're having conversations with yourself.
I don't talk a lot about my coaching program that I do with people on the podcast because the podcast is its own thing, separate from the company. But I feel like two of the biggest questions that I help people to answer, and I think if most financial advisors, most people, when they go to somebody for financial help, they ask a million different questions. How much do I need to retire? Is this enough money? What do I do with these investments? What do I do with those investments? What do I do with this savings account? Blah, 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 blah. 1,000 different questions. But what they're really asking are fundamentally two different questions. And it all comes back down to our core basic needs. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's 5 or 6 steps. I can't remember exactly right now, but I've broken it down into 2 different groups. There's your baseline needs. Those are your physical needs. Survival, food, shelter, warmth. And there's all the other ones after that, up to self-enlightenment. Self-actualization is what he called it. those would all be thriving. So the two questions that people ask are, will I be okay? How much is enough? They ask a million different questions. Those are the two questions they're really asking. Will I be okay? Survival. How much is enough? The rest of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, thriving. And I think that we end up, earlier on Monday's podcast, we talked about how some of the happiest people in the world live in these huts. They live in what we would call third world countries. And that's because when you have the comparison of everyone else is just trying to survive, you're not even worried about thriving. People who are in survival situations, they're not dealing with depression. They're not dealing with all these other things, very likely. Yes, they get sad. Yes, they feel all the emotions. But that ability to ruminate on that, for you to be able to feel depressed, is a luxury. And that's coming from someone who deals with depression and anxiety. It is a luxury to be able to have those things, because that means that you're not so worried about where's my next food going to come from? Where am I going to sleep tonight? All of these things, because that means you're making forward progress. You're doing all those things in order for you to feel all these anxiety and depression, all this stuff that I deal with. So I feel like I can at least call some people out on it, is that you have your survival done. And I think it's so funny that when people ask me those questions, 1,000 different ways to ask me the questions. But again, how much is enough? Am I going to be okay? Why are you looking to somebody else to answer those questions for you? No one knows what the future holds. If anyone tells you they do, run away. Or, start asking them for the next lottery numbers. I don't know. But no one knows what the future holds. So yes, you could have a bunch of money in the bank. But if tomorrow the government collapses and all your money goes to zero, are you going to be okay? I don't know. Only you can decide that. Will you be okay in your mind? Will you be able to, do you know with certainty that I don't know what the future holds, but no matter what happens, I know that I can figure it out because I trust in myself? And for enoughness, how much is enough? Well, that's the whole concept of this entire two podcasts. Without knowing your values, your history, your everything, how can we define what enough is? And enough changes constantly. Enough today for me is pretty low baseline. For friends of the pods, I'm able to survive on like $30,000 a year and be quite happy. There's so many ways to be wealthy. Two main ways though. One is to attain more. The easier one, the one that I go about doing for me in my life, is to desire less.
And why is that important?
Why is it important to desire less, or why is it important to... I don't think it's important to desire less. It's everyone's personal journey is their personal journey. For me, I know what my value. I value my time. I value my autonomy. I value the ability to spend time the way that I want to spend it. Working for somebody else was really tough for me to have to do that, to give up all of that to be able to bring in money. And I don't want to have to sacrifice the ability to do what I want to do when I want to do it, even if that means work harder than I've ever worked in my life, because I'm trying to attain a higher goal. The goal of my company is to be able to help entrepreneurs and other people, and mainly entrepreneurs, but individuals as well, attain financial independence. Be able to define how much is enough. Are you going to be okay? By looking at your psychology, your philosophy, all of these things for you as an individual. And the goal of the company isn't so that I make more money. Obviously, I make money because it's a lot of time that I put into each one of my clients that I work. But there are so many problems in the world, and I can't even begin to touch them. But what I can do is try to help as many people on the journey to get money out of the way so that they can focus on what's most important to them. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters, what true power is being able to protect the people that you love.
Percent.
So if I can get money out of the way for other people, that's why my company has a bigger mission than me, than making money for me. And that's why I get so upset about things when things happen, is because now you're messing up with the goal. The goal is to save the world in my own little way. It's to help other people so that they can go out and do whatever it is. We have so many issues in the world, from nuclear proliferation to climate change to governments failing constantly, failing their people. I can't even begin to touch any of those three things. But hopefully by making my small little ripples and control what I can control, helping the people that I can, they can make more ripples and more ripples and more ripples until eventually we have a tidal wave of change.
Do you think finding your answer to enough and finding your why, your purpose in life, are somehow intertwined?
I would say that all things are connected. Yeah, there is nothing that
Such
holds
a Buddhist answer. I love it.
independently.
I love it.
I know.
I love it.
It's the interconnected nature of all things, Dominic, obviously.
Yeah. Duh.
But
But
yeah, I would say it's
establishing,
all parts
yeah,
of causes and conditions. There's causes and conditions to all things that bring on the next point.
yeah, because I believe that once you find your why, it can definitely be a stepping stone to finding what is enough, or better yet, it puts what enough is in perspective. That makes sense. And
I'm
that's,
trying to remember.
yeah.
I haven't read Simon Sinek Start with Why in a while, but I remember that if I remember correctly, it starts with defining your values. And that's the reason that I kind of brought up. We need to define our values. So once we have that, we can start to define our why. Once we have our why, we have our enough, we have our goals. But most people don't even start there because they're too busy comparing themselves to other people. And something that I wanted to bring up, and it was a book that I read a long time ago that really, I think, started this whole concept for financial independence, for all of these things, was this book that I read. It was actually a YouTube video that eventually I read the book on.
Mhm.
The YouTube video was they asked people from age, I think it was like age 3 to age 100, their biggest regrets in life. And of course, like it starts off silly, like kids are like, oh, I regret that I didn't get the candy or whatever. But then as it gets older and older and older, these people are saying these profound questions. And that's what really put it into perspective to me that the only thing in life is death. The only reason we die is because we live. The only reason we live is because we die. And it made me start to think about these concepts of enough and what is enough and what are my values. And all this whole tangent started from this one YouTube video. And then eventually we came to a book by Bronnie Ware. And she was a palliative nurse, which for you who don't know what palliative nurse is, it's basically a fancy word for hospice nurse. She worked with people on their deathbed. And she wrote a book, and it was called The Top 5 Regrets of Dying. And I read this book when I started my financial independence journey back in, God, this would have been 2013, maybe 2012 ish, right out of college when I started figuring all this stuff out. And I would like to bring up the 5 things, if you don't mind, Dominic, if we
Please,
kind of
no,
talk over
absolutely. I
them,
love the
because
direction that you're going.
they really changed my life. So, number one in the book was, and I'm just going to put this in quotes. So, when you ask people who are dying on their deathbed, they go 1 through 5. So this is number 5. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. And I
Wow.
think that too many people realize too late in life that they lived according to other people's expectations rather than pursuing their own dreams and desires. And I think it's even taking a step further, and this is more of a Buddhist concept. I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who you think I am, which is a very moral conundrum because we're always trying to shape ourselves to who other people believe we are. So you're never really being true to yourself. You're not being true to who you think I am or who I am to you. I'm trying to be true to who I think you think I am, which of course we can never reach the destination. There's too many variables in there. But when I read this book and the courage to live the life true to myself, not what others expected of me, it started making me rethink the career I was in, the trajectory I was on. And that's what pursued me to finding financial independence because, yes, I wanted to be able to live a life that I had, but I still lived in the real world. And in the real world, I still needed money. So that's where the financial independence stuff kind of came in of like, oh, I can figure this out. Then I can live in accordance with my values. I can have that FU money to do whatever I want. No one can tell me how to live my life. And I guess it's the rebellious teenager in me that still does that, to this day. What's your thought on that one?
That is a crazy way to start out a book. My goodness. Live life to your truest version of yourself. People on their deathbed, they were disappointed about how they lived their life. Wow. I've cooked some bad meals in my day. I've had turkeys that were pretty dry, and it's very disappointing. But I can only imagine living 80 years and being disappointed with the way I lived it. That must be a deep, deep emotion, right to your core values, right to your core being. I mean, that is heavy to say the least. So that impacted you pretty prolifically, right? I mean, you changed fundamentally how you thought, how you operated, and really the way you set your goals. I mean, if that's number 5, I mean, we got to get on to number 4, 3, 2, and 1. I
Yeah,
mean, what else you got for us?
And now that I'm looking at the list a little bit closer, because we do this live, I think these are in no particular order.
Okay.
So now that I'm actually looking, there's no particular order. Number 2 was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And if I remember correctly, it was a common regret amongst men who felt that they missed out on spending time with their families or enjoying life because they were at work. They were spending time providing for their family rather than providing for their family.
Yeah.
They provided the physical needs, but not the emotional needs.
Yeah. And I think that's a very common thing with entrepreneurs who are men as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, you think you're doing it for them, but they never asked for it. They never asked for it. And it's such an interesting concept because you want to be that great provider and give them the best chance, the chance maybe that you didn't have, but at what cost? Because everything comes at a cost. Maybe now that you're working more, you're lacking in some other areas that you got more of as a kid. Okay.
I can't remember who it was, but maybe it was Will Smith or something like that. He was talking about like a fight he had with his wife, and maybe it's not Will Smith, maybe somebody else entirely. Maybe it's a movie that I watched, but the husband is basically berating his wife and yelling like, I did all of this for you. I go to work 50 hours. I made all this money. I created this empire for you. And then she turns back and went, no, you didn't. You did this for yourself. And I wonder how many men go through life ignoring their values. And they tell themselves it's for their family, it's for other people. But at its core, it's for themselves. It's so that they can feel that they are enough because they won in a race that no one else was playing against them. It's kind of like, remember when you were a teenager? All teenage boys have done this, so sorry, moms.
Oh, no.
Pull up to a red light. You look over at some guy who doesn't know that they're racing with you. You look to your friend, you're like, I'm going to beat this person. Light turns green, and you take off, and you're like, whoa, I won. And that other person's like driving like normal.
They didn't even know.
And then they didn't even know they were in a race. And we all do this.
Yeah, that's true.
like we all do this with people. We're all doing this with everyone we see. Like, I'm about to race this person. And who's the real winner in that situation? The person that just wasted a bunch of money and gas on their vehicle, or the person who is so fine in their ways of, I'm just trying to get to my destination and I know I'm going to get there eventually. I don't need the speed on my way there. I'm going to get there safer and in a better way. They both get to the same destination. Maybe one gets there sooner. Maybe one gets to death sooner. But one got there enjoying the journey. Last week or 2 weeks ago, one of your big goals, Dominic, was you wanted to speed up for this year, for 2025. And I'm still looking at my sticky note that I have right over here to the left of my screen that says slow down. Slow down and enjoy. Slow down and be present. Slow down and understand that all of this is fleeting. And at the end of my life, all I'm going to want is 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes with my family, 5 more minutes with my dog, my wife, with whatever. And for right now, I have an indefinite amount of time of 5 minutes. Yet I'm letting them all waste by. Not being present with what is right now because I'm too busy focusing on what I can't have in the future, or I'm too busy being stuck in the past as to what was. And I hope as I talk through these things and kind of share what goes on in my brain, other people can realize like, oh, he's saying what is going on in him and it's going on in me, or this is what's happening with me. And not that I'm right, not that what's going on in my head is right or what's going on in your head is wrong. There's just different ways of looking at it. So I think we're going to skip 5 Friday feedback again and just continue on with this conversation, if that's okay. And to our listeners, if you're getting value, or if you like the viewer mailbags and you're like, hey, Chris, Dominic, like, cut these conversations shorter. We don't want this. We want the viewer mailbags. Leave it in the comments and we won't listen to you exactly, but we'll take that as advice.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not going to be any mutiny here. The chat will not control our podcast, but we do take suggestions and we try to.
We do take suggestions.
Try to tune it to you. No, that's pretty funny though.
We recently got reached out to again by another person that wanted to sponsor the podcast. And I told you when we first started this that like I'd be open to it in the future, but at this point I'm still not open to it because I never want us to feel like we're controlled by other people.
Yeah.
I like that we're able to do the podcast that we want to do, that we think is beneficial for the world without sponsors or anyone else saying like, you have to do it this way. The only sponsor of us is me or my company.
Yeah.
Which is pretty nice to be like, hey, like, don't worry, Dominic. I know the boss. I know what I say to him to make him listen. How dare
you say that to me, Chris? I'm going to take it up with Mr. Monzon. He's going to get you for that. the joke is Chris is Mr. Monson. The joke, you guys understand. You guys get it. So first of all, I think this is a book. Maybe we should do a full. I don't know if we should do a full review, maybe in a couple months or something like that. But give me a chance to read it. I'll put that on my list of books I would like to read this year.
It's pretty short.
It's pretty short. All right. Well, that's good. Good. I like efficiency. I'm trying to go faster, so that works. No, I think it's really interesting to see like the different stages that we are in life. You know, you're a few stages ahead of me. And maybe that, maybe that doesn't exist at all either,
Yeah.
But, you're trying to slow down. You've been you've literally been Mr. Speed, last decade and some change, getting to a goal, right? And myself, I'm ramping up to get to a goal. And it's beautiful, it's, I think it's important to have people share their ideas who are on different steps in their journey, right? It helps us to really establish a connection with a wider group of people and get our different perspectives on life and all these fun stuff. But, returning to our main theme of today's podcast, what is enough and all these different things, I really hope that you can kind of establish a conversation with yourself, try and figure out how to get to enough, and not the number enough, not the feeling enough, but how to get to the question of enough. And I hope that the question I'm asking you can process. I hope that makes sense to you. I hope that you can process that. Because I know not everybody who listens to the pod or is in the world is on the same level in their growth journey, in their personal growth journey. And some people, this question, somebody might be alive 100 years, never have this question asked or answered. And that's okay. But for me, one of my goals this year is to live with intention. It's one of my goals this life is to live with intention. And it's very difficult for me. I'll be honest. It's very difficult to me. But I'm trying. And I encourage you all to find those core values and find what enough is. And
what I would do if I had to try to like shorten down this curve so people don't have to have this big goal that they think is the goal to realize that that wasn't the goal, is to try to shorten this down to a day. And what I would probably do if I had to do this, because I learned this lesson over a decade. I would rather people learn it a lot faster. So this is just off the dome. But what I would do is I would sit down and say, if I did this tomorrow, it would be enough. That day would have been perfect. And then go out the next tomorrow, write it down the night before, and go out and make that day happen. And at the end of that day, if you make it happen, and if you don't make it happen, try again the next day.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, ask yourself, am I enough? And maybe you're going to realize that the goals you're setting is not the destination. The journey is the destination. The obstacle is the way. I remember when we started the podcast, Dominic, and I told you, if we could just help one person, podcast has been successful. And we've done that.
Yeah. We helped two
people.
people.
Now it's like, okay, we've helped two people. We helped quite a few people, actually.
Yeah.
I know we've helped you and I, but we've helped comments. We've seen stuff. And now it's like, okay, we helped 10, we helped 100, we helped 1,000. I want more, I want more, I want more. And I'm seeing this concept of enoughness come up in my own life with this podcast. I remember there was a time where I was like, Dominic, if I could see your and my face on my podcast feed that came out every Monday and Wednesday, like I would be enough. That would be my goal. And then we hit that. And then my brain immediately habituated to the next goal. Immediately. The moment I had it, I was like, I've always had that. And it's so funny in like podcast world and all this stuff, because when you look at our like views on YouTube, trash. But you look at our streams on podcast players, really good. So it's so funny to like, you look at one thing, you're like, oh, well, it's always been like that. You look at the other thing, you're like, well, we need to fix that. And it's so difficult when you're doing this like stuff because there are external metrics. And the most important thing is your internal metrics. Are you doing what you set out to do? And that's the one thing I can always hang our hat on, regardless of what's happening with the podcast, is that you and I are sticking true to what we think is best for our audience and ourselves, most importantly. That's why we get to say that every week, we know for sure we're helping two people. You and I. We know that for sure. If 0 people listen to the podcast, we at least know that.
Whenever I used to fly, it always used to crack me up. If the mask comes down, help yourself, then help others. And it goes against every instinct. It goes against a mother's instinct to help her baby. It goes against a father's instinct to watch out for others, you know? And I find that the more podcasts we record, the more we really discover ourselves more, become better speakers, better teachers, better learners, just better in every way. I mean, it's like the better we are, the better we can help. And I love that. And like you said, like seeing our journey play out live. I mean, I wouldn't recommend going back to our first episode. I would never recommend that.
Trash.
Ever. Ever. If I recommend that, it's a doppelganger or something. It's AI, because it was bad. It was terrible. Or everything about it was bad. But to see how far we've come is so beautiful. And to know it's like, man, we're just getting started on this journey, and I love it. I'm excited for it, you know? And I hope you guys find something that you're excited for as well, that really lights you up, because those are the things that make life enough. Sometimes life is too much. And it's those little things that you look forward to that make it just enough. Make it just enough.
You know, I've been thinking about this a lot. And in a second, we're going to get back to number 3 of the regrets.
Yeah.
People who are dying. But I think too often I've pursued happiness as the goal. Enough would be when I was finally happy all the time. You know, as if I would be able to reach the mountaintop and be like, there, I've done it. Like, I'm here and I get to stay here forever. And there's an old Buddhist parable that before enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, you chop wood and you carry water. The goal is to just keep on moving forward. There is no magical end to it. And maybe enough isn't a feeling of happiness. Enough is contentment, of knowing that you are there and you still get to move forward. Because no matter where you go, there you are, and you're always there. You're always making that progress. And that you are the person that needs to be enough. Therefore, all other things are enough. So rather than trying to find enough outside of you, which is an impossibility because it just keeps on moving, if you're enough, wherever you go, there you are. You are enough everywhere because you fundamentally are enough. And those are the core differences between Western religions and Eastern religions. Western religions, Christianity, Catholicism, you come into this world fundamentally flawed, and you have to find religion, the good word, in order to be enough, in order to find your divinity. In Eastern religions, you are born perfect, and then due to the world, due to society, due to your people, they fill you up. They fill your cup with things that shouldn't be there. And it's up to you to unlearn the things that you learned to go back to your divinity. Either way, same side of the two coins, you are enough already.
Absolutely. You know, you said something earlier about your goal being happiness. And you know, I never considered happiness to be the goal.
My goal was happiness. Now it's contentment.
Yeah, your goal was happiness. Now it's contentment. You know, I never, on my journey, I've never considered happiness a goal. And I can understand why someone would put happiness as a goal if they were struggling, you know, if all they felt was the opposite of happiness. If all they felt was chaos, pain, struggle, you know, it's like, man, can I catch a break, man? Damn. Get some happy, like that's the goal now, happiness. That's the goal. You know, that's the goal because that's what I don't have. And I'm grateful that I always had the happiness. But I believe happiness, you know, is a choice. And it comes from a great pair of glasses. And the glasses happen to be gratitude. And only through the glasses are how you see things. You have a rose-tinted glasses, well, then you're going to see a lot of rose-tinted things. If your glasses only show the negative things of life and how, wow, I mean, everybody is out to get me, well, then that's the pair of glasses you're wearing. But you can wear the gratitude glasses and see the happiness in life. And you can be in the foxhole, in the worst spot in your life, still find happiness. But I don't know.
I would say,
Please.
I don't know either. I wonder if rather than calling it glasses, just call it what it is. It's your mindset.
Yeah.
The mindset that you're both born with and taught. Because it's a little bit of nature, it's a little bit of nurture. And yeah, you're exactly right. For me, someone who has very rarely felt happy in my life, then that makes sense for why that was the goal for me. To like, oh, I wish I could be happy, like be on this state for an eternity. Want to move on to number 3 of the things?
Yeah, let's move on to number three. I do have some more thoughts on happiness, but I don't know if I'm ready to speak more on it. I need to think
Well, let
on
me
it.
get to number five then, and then you can think
Okay,
about it.
please go for it.
So, number three, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Again, these are the top five biggest regrets of people's life. And I think that people regret in their dying moments holding back on their emotions and not being honest with others. Because when you hold back your emotions, when you try to protect others or protect yourself, that often leads to resentment in other people because you weren't able to express your emotions. And that could be on their end because you were afraid of the way they would react. But more importantly, you were afraid they would reject you, that you would be not enough. And I think there's another side of the coin of that expressing your feelings, and that's out of fear of showing your emotions because someone might label you as crazy or whatever, and again, say that you're not enough. It leads to missed opportunities for connection. Because one of the best ways to connect with somebody is to show your emotion, to show that you are a person. One of the ways that I think I'm pretty good at connecting with people is to realize the suffering that we all have. And you're able to empathize immediately that, oh, you've suffered that way too? Immediately we have a bond. There's a reason that Jewish people have such a strong gathering to one another every year as part of their tradition. And I don't know a lot about Judaism. This is just what I was told. As part of the tradition, they reflect as if they were the people that escaped slavery from the Egyptians. Not that their people did it, that they did it, that they went through that suffering. They went through that turmoil of thousands of years of slavery under the Egyptians to build the pyramids, to build all that they built, and that they escaped and were able to find the promised land together. And now imagine if you tell yourself that story every single year over and over and over again. Not that our people went through this, that I went through this individually. When you meet another person that is a part of your group, you now have shared suffering. That's part of your tradition to go through.
The question that comes up in my mind when I'm hearing these things, and especially with the point that you just made from the book, I think life gives us the ability to be courageous every day. And oftentimes we cower in fear. So I wonder, what would we do? What would we say if we weren't afraid? How would you express yourself if you weren't afraid of judgment? What would you do if people didn't judge you?
Well, even if people didn't judge you, how would you feel if you knew at your core you were enough? Because judgments can hurt you if you have an underlying fear of it. It's like if you went to Warren Buffett and you're like, you're really poor. Like there's not even an ethos of him that'd be like, that hurt, because he knows it's fundamentally not true. But if you were to say you weren't a good father, I could see that really hurting him.
Yeah.
And we have these core wounds, this most important thing, enoughness, or not the most important thing, survival. And then after that, this concept of enoughness, it kind of seeps into everything, right? Like that feeling of, am I enough, seeps into every aspect of your life. If you mess up on if you don't make enough money, not enough. If you got a new car, but your neighbor got a better car, not enough. If your business is succeeding, but not succeeding to the level of somebody else, not enough. I just wonder what it would be like if you felt to your core, to your being, not just told yourself, but truly believed it, that you were enough and that you had enough right now. The fourth biggest regret that people have on their deathbed is, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And I think as life gets busy, many people just lose touch with their close friends. And I think at the end of their life, they begin to regret not nourishing those relationships, not keeping up with that, because it does take effort. And I think too many people, they go through life wanting it to be easy, expecting it to be easy. And when things aren't easy, they revolt against it. It's supposed to be easy. I was told it was supposed to be easy and all these things. Marriage is supposed to be easy, all this stuff. And it's just not true. No one was born to this world, came out, doctor smacked you on the butt, made you cry, and then went, all right, now your world's going to be easy. That was the only thing you have. Like life is suffering. We're meant to walk uphill. And life isn't suffering because life is awful. Life is suffering because we're constantly striving to be enough when you already are there. So maybe that's why it's so difficult to get to the destination, because you're already at the destination, but you keep on moving it to somewhere else. You keep on thinking, oh, the destination is actually at B. And then the moment you get to B, it was actually at C. Oh no, it was at D, it was at 1, it was at 2, it was at 3. But you're the destination. You're always there. And of course you can't find it on a map.
So are
Go
you
for it.
you're kind of prophesizing that the destination and the journey are one and the same.
Yes.
That's a very freeing thing to believe. That's a very, man, weight off your shoulder type of belief. I don't have to stress about, man, I got to get to the school, man. I got to get, it's like, dude, no, we're here. We're here. We're in it. We're in it. Sometimes you just got to poke your head up and, man, look around, realize how far you've come. We're in it, man. I love that. That's one of my favorite things that we've said on today's episode. It's how the journey and the destination, man, we're already there.
And that's kind of where when I say the obstacle is the way, like that's what I'm saying in that, is that the journey, the things you have to go through is it. You are already there. Wherever you go, there you are. All of these things are saying the exact same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That your goal and your journey are one and the same. I heard a Buddhist philosopher once. He was asked the question, what is the meaning of life? And he simply responded, to live. And for the first time, I was like, holy crap. And then it begs the question, like, well, how do you live? And then by doing that, by realizing that your goal and your destination are in the same place, just by being you, listen to your core being and just do that. Stop striving for other things. The unaimed arrow never misses its mark. Be formless, be aimless. That's kind of Taoism. And that's the reason that when I read the Taoist text, the Tao Te Ching, I stay on one page for weeks trying to understand what the hell does this mean? Because so much of it is difficult. How can you have a goal and not have a goal? That doesn't make sense to me. The goal is to have no goal. Well, then if the goal is to have no goal, then you have a goal. And maybe that's the point of the thing is to learn it and then to unlearn it and to realize that you're already there.
It's so interesting to see how you feel like you've mastered an area, but right next door, you're a white belt. Right next door, it's like, man, I don't understand it. And I love that.
It's very frustrating. When you think you've made it,
journey continues.
I'm not even close to there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, you know how long it took me to get here? That was another mountain. Man.
This is number 5. And this was the one that hit me like a ton of bricks when I first read this. And it really prompted me to change my mindset to the best of my ability, while also knowing that I have a pair of glasses on. I have a weight vest on me that's from my childhood, from my genetics, from a bunch of different things. And I can't even begin to parse out all of those things. But when I realized that I could change it was the moment that I decided that I have to change it. We have, as human beings, this unique ability. It's called neuroplasticity. Mm-hmm. The ability for your brain to change, not just for you to learn new things, but for your brain to fundamentally rewire itself. It takes energy, it takes effort, it takes concentration, it takes time. Number 5 of the greatest regrets of people's life was, I wish I had let myself be happy. And if I remember correctly, many of the people on their deathbed realized that happiness was a choice, and they regretted allowing fear and worry to prevent them from enjoying their life. Fear and worry. And I think that those two concepts, fear and worry, come from not being enough. Fear that you're not enough with wherever you are. And then there's also the other thought that I find to be huge, is that they realized that happiness was a choice and they regretted not having it.
Yeah.
They lost themselves and they wish that they let themselves be happy. I remember when I read that, I wish I had let myself be happier. And I realized so it was a choice the whole time. And they didn't realize it until it was over. And we just run a thought experiment to say, hey, tomorrow I'm going to come find you and I'm going to shoot you. You have now a choice to make sure that tomorrow is the best day of your life.
Yeah.
Because it has a definitive end. And I don't want to go my entire life to remember that when I can say it right now and I can say the words, but living it is a very different thing. And that's what I'm trying to explore in my brain and what we're trying to explore here with our podcast listeners and ourselves.
Absolutely. I wish I had let myself be happier. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think a lot of people hold on to things that are dragging them down. And it's freeing to know that people that have nothing left to give, that are at the end of their days, they say that happiness is a choice. And I hope today you choose happiness. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you're choosing growth. And I believe that growth and happiness are very important for a bright life.
So with that, we hope that you enjoyed our discussion as to what is enough. And I'd like to just leave you again with the question: what would your life look like if you decided that you were already enough? Go out and make it a great day. Tell somebody about the Fi Guys, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And we will see you here on Monday for another amazing episode. I'm Chris. He's Dom. Later.
Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Mons on Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monsonwealth.com.